Okay, we're recording now. So, hello everyone, to everyone who's listening to this after. Welcome to our conversation. My name is Shenan Charania, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm sitting here with Marika Mayer, and we are about to just get into a conversation about the principles and the understanding that was brought to us by Sydney Banks. Excuse me. And we are holding an event in November, so we thought we would just jump on the phone and chat a little bit about it and give people more of an idea of what they can expect and our experience of how the principles has affected us. So with that, let me ask you, Marika, if you would like to just share a little bit of how did you come across this understanding and what kind of implications have you seen in your life from it?
Hmm. I first came upon this understanding when I was 20 years old, a few years ago. And at that point in my life, I'd been setting a lot of goals, really just growing up and meeting my goals. And, I finished school, I got my first job. I married my sweetheart. We got our first home. All these things that I had planned for, that I thought would make my ideal life, took place. And my thought always at the time, when while I was working so hard to meet all these goals, was that things will be great when. I was trying to set up the ideal situation in my life so that I could find my peace and contentment. And I was like a little hamster on the wheel, just going and going, trying to achieve my goals. The strange part was each time one of those goals was reached, it was, oh, now what? It doesn't feel any different. And, I had a lovely husband, I had a lovely job, our home, everything was in place. But I still had that uncomfortable feeling that I was missing something.
Hmm.
And I'd grown up as a spiritual child, so to speak. I always knew there was something. So I was a bit of a searcher as well. And I was always looking outside myself. I was brought up in a church, and things didn't sit right completely there with me. I joined some of the movements at the time in the 70s. There was a lot of searcher groups going on, the retreats and workshops to go find yourself. And I would, while I was in college, I was invited to join some of those. And always I knew there was something, but I nothing quite hit it for me. Nothing sat right inside that really made me feel, gave me some direction. So I came across a book that was describing somebody's experience with Sid Banks. And then outside the preschool I was teaching, and there was a poster that talked about some local meetings in the town where I was living. And I gathered up all my courage, and I had my husband in one hand and a fellow a friend who was a parent in my preschool who was also interested. And arm in arm, we arrived at this meeting together to see what this was all about, because we were all a little bit curious. And we walked into a friend's home, a new friend's home, and noticed a group of people chatting. There was a warm feeling in the room, and they welcomed us, and we sat down. We listened to a tape at Sydney Banks, and I was just watching the interaction between the people, and I just noticed a happy buzz in the room. And immediately my thoughts jumped to, oh, look how phony this is. I was very judgmental. And but I just stayed quiet. I was being polite, and I listened and I listened. And while I was quiet, something within me was stirring. And I realized there was perhaps something more to this than I initially judged. I liked the feeling in the room. That spoke to me more than any of the
Mm.
words. Um, there was a feeling of warmth, a quiet feeling of knowing, but my mind couldn't figure anything out. But somewhere deep within me, there was something that just said, yes, I want this feeling in my everyday. So that opened me up and I started listening more. And somehow it slipped past my intellect and into the spirit of me. It connected with me. The me inside, the true me, recognized something, even though my mind was scrambling. And I stuck with that feeling. So I stayed open. And that's where my journey began. And I began listening more and more, and listening to tapes, listening to, I attended a few talks of Sid. And that's where, even though I couldn't intellectually always grasp it, I was assured that it didn't come to us through the intellect, because it was the spirit recognizing the truth. And it's that spirit that's in all of us that is stirred when you realize something that's true. It's our all inner knowing. So it's that feeling in your gut when you know something is right.
Yeah.
And that's where my journey started.
Very interesting. So that was almost 20 years ago, or well over 20 years ago now? Mentioned the 70s.
that was, I'm scared to say, more than 40 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well,
But
that's
the
just,
time has no bearing. It really doesn't.
no, it doesn't. But it gives an idea of how much you've been around the understanding. So I asked the question because
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, after that, what the implications were,
Mm.
going forward and knowing this, and obviously gaining a depth into it as you go into it more.
I'm still learning. I still feel such a baby at this understanding,
Yeah.
because life always gives us more lessons to learn it more, to grow deeper. But it's such a beautiful foundation in my life now. But right away, what I noticed in my life, when I came into this, I was on shaky ground, because I was feeling great disappointment in why wasn't I feeling better once I had achieved all my goals. Like, why did I not feel that contentment and satisfaction I expected to have? And this understanding showed me that those things outside me, where I was looking for the answers, that was empty. The answers were not out there for my personal contentment, because it had to come from within. It had to come from me, from my feeling, not the other way around. I felt like a victim in my life, because no matter what I did, it didn't feel right. And then all of a sudden, Sid shared with us, like, go live an ordinary life, just be happy. And that's within you. And if you start there, you will have a beautiful life. So I just relaxed and just accepted how things were. And all of a sudden there was a shift in how I felt. And I can't even properly describe it. But all of a sudden, I took myself less seriously. I started noticing more humor, more beauty. And I recognized that everybody around me was the same as me, that they all had this source inside them. And I just felt more connected to people in that way. So I would talk to the beauty within that person I was with, or share with my students. Just a nice feeling. And it didn't matter so much about the details of what we were doing.
Right.
But I just felt a comfort within myself that I had not felt before. And I understood that it had something to do with my thinking, what I focused on.
Hmm.
So if all my attention was on beautiful things, I started having beautiful feelings. If my attention was on things that were not so great, my feelings went in that direction. So it taught me very simply that to listen to your feelings as a guide to where you take your thinking and your actions after that. And of course, life situations came up that were challenging. But I always had a choice. Do I stay in that challenging mindset, or do I just let it go for now, suspend it for a bit, and come back to that comfort inside? And the more I started experiencing that, the more confidence I had that it was there.
Right.
That's how it worked for me. And then I started seeing results in my life. My life with my husband became easier. I judged him less and felt more comfortable with him. With my students, I was teaching 3 to 5-year-olds in the college's preschool at the time. And I loved my students. I worked very hard with them. And the shift from my first year without this understanding to the second year, when I was starting to get a clue, was remarkable, because all of a sudden it was easier to lift the students to the direction for their learning to take place, because it wasn't so task oriented. It was more connecting with them and joining them in the learning. Even though outwardly I was doing my job as I had been before, but it was a shift in feeling with them that started having better results with them, because they connected. They liked that better feeling. They recognized it too.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding that they had the ability to grow and nurture instead of being challenged by their shortcomings. We just were on the same team in feeling. So the learning naturally happened easier.
Right.
Yeah. And in loving my home, right? Just taking care of my home. I found a love of my garden that I hadn't had before. Before, it was always work to go out and make it look nice. And then all of a sudden I just relaxed it. It was like all these different aspects in my life. I just found more contentment. And I was so grateful. And when I was more grateful, then I had even more beautiful feelings. It just kind of, and then it attracted nice things in my life. So instead of striving and working so hard, it was easier to have a happy life. It was very simple, very simple. It always said, go and be ordinary. And I was working so hard before to be special. I thought you had to achieve something to have, be worthy of being happy. And I didn't realize it wasn't like that at all. It was backwards. You start with looking inside. I didn't know there was an inside, really. I kind of had an inkling, but this gave me my first knowing that, yes, it's real,
Right.
And being human, it's like you go in and out of it, right? It's like I don't live in a state of bliss all my hours of the day, but always knowing that we have that home to come back to. to quiet that thinking down, to come back to that peace, regardless what's going on. That's where the guidance is.
Yeah.
So that's how it impacted my life.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I relate to that in so many levels of when you were talking about, and that's why I smiled when you said, you were trying to achieve everything outside and you weren't finding that contentment. And I can relate to that so much of how I've gone through my life trying to decorate my external world to feel good inside. And it doesn't work. But I just wanted to share, like, when you were speaking about that, I remember when I first came across this and I was looking for another method, another modality, another tool, another technique that I can make my life a little bit easier and my clients' lives a little bit easier. But the search for it was, my approach was, ooh, this is more information that I can take and apply and put it out and my clients can apply it. But it didn't work that way at all, as I soon found out. And when you were speaking about, having that beautiful feeling be the guide and understanding more that it is how it tells you what kind of thinking you're doing. And when you're feeling nice and calm and peaceful, then you said, you became grateful, and that kind of perpetuated it. And I related to that only from coming to this understanding, because it showed me that it wasn't at all about acquiring any information. It wasn't about the content that I'm hearing. It was more about what that was pointing to inside of myself. And once I finally started to see a little bit, I stopped trying to grasp it and trying to apply it. And then when I stopped doing that, I gave it a chance. I gave myself a chance to notice the feeling that's inside of me already.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I related to that a lot when you said it. It seems like everyone has a different avenue, a different route, but everyone has that same feeling level.
Exactly, Shenan. I find, and when I have that beautiful feeling, it's that inspiration from that feeling. That feeling has an information with it that will guide me to my next direction or my next steps, regardless whether it's work related or home related, or just how to look at the world, right? When you have a beautiful feeling, it's full of that. It's connecting you to your inner wisdom. And that is such a practical, helpful tool. It's not airy-fairy and out there. No, it's real. That's the thing that tells you when you're in a tough situation, which direction to go. If you can hear that. So what a
the practical part, I think you nailed it right there, because at least in my experience, when I was trying to be practical, I was trying to apply things, and it's nice, right? We all want to enjoy the good things in life and the physical world too, and achieve and accomplish, and all of that feels good. But the biggest difference I seen that was subtle and made the hugest shift and continues to, is that I can either start making decisions from my thinking, or I can settle in and, like you said, have that wisdom guide me and still make decisions, but more aligned, and still go after achievements and accomplishments, but more aligned. And it comes less from my distorted thinking, less from my distorted opinions and judgments about what's out there or even about me. And it just works out a little bit better and a little bit gentler and a little bit more clear as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you're coming from a state of freedom instead of trying to get to a place of freedom.
I love that. That's
Right?
right. That's right. That's
That
right.
was my experience.
Yeah,
It's like freedom is not out there. Stop searching for it. You can come from it, and you have such a better and more clear way of navigating.
absolutely. You know, Shenan, you're describing living it,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. It's just part of who we are. And if we know that, then we live a happier life. It's that simple,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
being human, we're in and out, right? It's like see that inside part of us, in my understanding, that's the formless part, the spiritual part, the part that you can't see so obviously, you know? And what's around us is the form. You know, all the things outside us that before I depended on, because I thought, you know, for those things outside me to be in place to be happy, that was what had to be. I didn't realize that if you came from that beautiful feeling or that knowing or that calm, that presence inside us, to be in touch with that more in my living, that would actually influence what was happening out there.
Right.
It's learning to live from the inside out, from the formless to the form. And as human beings, we jump back and forth from, because being human, we get trapped, we get caught up in what we see out there, and then we let it go and go back inside. We live both sides. And the more I see the outside and the inside coming closer, it's really the same thing. I'm just beginning to see that. It's an aspect or a side of, it's a reflection of what's inside us, but it's really the same ball of wax.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, you put that.
Yeah. See, I'm just learning this as we're speaking. It's just striking me. So, you know, we all want more peace in our life. We all want more contentment, you know. And the more we can see this, it's so helpful. You know, we see ourselves in our humanity, but we also see where we're coming from.
Yeah.
You know, that we have that beautiful guide inside that's just there if we look. And I was so glad to learn that it's, you know, that it's there, right? That's what I'm so grateful for from Sydney Banks, is that he kept pointing us in that direction. And because I'm so grateful, having learned that, you know, it's my pleasure to help point other people in that direction too, because that's what makes the difference in how I experience life and what you're describing, how you experience your life, you know, coming from a place of calm, place of happiness, a place of enjoyment. Yeah. Lovely.
It is lovely. That's the exact word that was on my mind.
And I just cracked one of Sid's books open, and there's just a little quote that jumped out at me. Can I share it with you?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. It happens to be about what we're talking about. It says, to look outside for the answers you seek is to dream. To look within is to awaken the wisdom that lies within. So that's the direction I'm always looking for now, you know. Like, go inside, And I remember when I first came across this, Sid would say the answers are inside. And I'd say, where's inside? Is it in my heart? Where is inside?
Yeah.
I feel it with my heart, I think. But it's not a location because it has no form.
Oh, I did that too. I looked in the thinking, in the memories, in the imagination, it's not there.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, we've had a pretty cool conversation here, and I don't want to, take too much time, but
Okay.
I still would like to ask you, we are having, you and I are hosting the event on Remembrance Day, November 10th and 11th, 2 full days. I would like the viewers to get a little bit of an idea of what they can expect if they come. And I have my own thoughts, but I'm really looking forward to what you would say about that.
Okay. I would like to share with people to invite them to come and look from within, to find out what they have inside them. And, we'll talk about the 3 principles of mind, thought, and consciousness, and how we experience that in our everyday life, what that looks like. And I'd love to hear from our participants their learning and their everyday experience as we uncover this. So this will be a journey together where we will look for that understanding and share that beautiful feeling to take us to a place where we understand more deeply how we create our experience every day.
Right. Well said.
Makes sense? Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Thank you. I would like to just let the viewers know, in terms of what they can expect, I've spoken to a lot of people around this understanding, and what I've seen mostly across the board, including with myself as well, is that insecurity and anxiety, those are 2 things that are always present when we're trying to do something, when we're just living life, when we're even not trying to do anything sometimes. And I don't mean that in a state of, we got to get rid of the anxiety and the insecurity and we can't function without it, but more about just trying to understand it instead of trying to do something about it. And for me, that's made the biggest difference in my life, and get a deeper understanding of what emotions are instead of trying to adjust them, get rid of them, power through them, trying to do something with them is totally different than trying to look at them.
Oh, I like that. Yes. Yeah.
That's been the biggest thing, and even for my clients, when everyone either they're suffering from it, or they want to start a new project and it starts showing up. Ooh, I'm insecure, I'm anxious, I'm stressful. I want to transition careers. I want to start a business. And, again, the most helpful thing has been, wait, let's just kind of look how it's created. Let's understand them more. And then they can proceed with an understanding. Insecurity can be there. It just becomes less significant, right? It becomes less put on a pedestal that you have to overcome.
Shenan, you're doing a beautiful job of describing how we use our thinking in that way.
Yeah.
How that principle of thought,
right,
understanding that more deeply will help us all through anxiety and insecurity, and to learn the difference between the content of that kind of thinking, because we've all had it and we all know it, we're all familiar, and what difference it makes to understand the principle of thought, that it is a neutral thing that we do, and how much attention we pay to those kind of thoughts that will grow them or let them diminish. So that's a beautiful topic to speak about in our retreat, because understanding that more fully for myself, and I think for anybody, is really, really helpful in how understanding our gift of thought and how we use it, takes things from day to night or night to day. But, it's
Totally.
like a vast difference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a
It's
great thing to talk about. That's a powerful thing to know.
Yeah. No, it has been in my life. It's been a huge difference to understand that you can use thought, or well, you are using thought, or you're misusing thought. And when I started to see, that there's an understanding of how I'm misusing thought, doing it completely unintentionally. Nobody wakes up and tries to create stress for themselves. But that made a huge, significant difference of here's where I'm using it, here's where I'm misusing it. And as that understanding grows continuously, even today, it just takes, I'm approaching life with a little more calm. I'm approaching life with a little more freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have those thoughts that sometimes that really are like last week, I woke up and one day I was just insecure. And it hadn't even been 10 seconds since I've been woken up. So I'm going, I'm not going to mean to do this to myself. But having the understanding helped me go, oh, okay, there's some thinking going on right now. I don't need to sort it out. I don't need to go in there.
Yeah.
And by noon, it left, and I don't know when it left. Whereas before, if I was insecure, I would try to overcome it. I would try and do something about it.
Right.
And that was the biggest difference of still approaching your day by being yourself with just as much energy. And you kind of have this annoying neighbor that leaves at some time and you don't have to do anything about it.
Yeah. A lovely description. Yeah. Nicely said. Yeah, because our thinking is always going on, and you can't really control your thinking, but how much attention you pay to it. And it's like watching yourself in life. It's like when you're one step removed, even when you're going through it, but when you're in that watching place, watching yourself in that parade, it takes the sting out of the situation. And that the calm will come back again, right? Like it always does, it's, whatever we're experiencing, it's a temporary thing, the ebb and flow of life and the ebb and flow of our understanding. But always to have that foundational understanding behind us. Once you know it, you can't unknow it. It's always there, no matter how much we get caught up in life. It's like you have this safe resting place, this safe guiding place to come back to, which is really, really, life altering. Yeah. So instead of fighting with the world, you let go for a moment, and oh yeah, here we go again. And your direction comes back. So that's a good thing that we all can learn more about, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's a never-ending direction to look into. Well, I think we should pause here, and we're going to continue with another webinar. But before we go, I really just want to thank you for sharing what you did. You said a few things that really struck me as well, and I'm grateful that we had this conversation, and I hope that people that are viewing this get some value out of it. And We will continue, and I'll post the date for the next one under this one, and I'll post the link to the events as well if people are really interested in looking at that. So again, thank you, Marika. Thank you
Oh,
for joining
thank
me
you.
today.
Yeah, I'm learning from you. I'm really enjoying this as well. So thank you, and I look forward to the next things coming up.
Me
Thank
too.
you.
I really enjoy my conversations with you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Shenan.
Thank you, Marika.